The lights dimmed in CBS studios as Oprah Winfrey sat comfortably in her signature interview chair, her purple dress perfectly pressed, her smile warm as she prepared to interview Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. The audience fell silent, phones raised to capture what was supposed to be a friendly conversation about Crockett's rise in politics. But within seconds, everything changed. "You've been spreading lies about working-class Americans for years," Crockett suddenly declared, leaning forward, her bright red blazer a stark contrast to Oprah's calm purple. "And your viewers deserve to know the truth about your political connections." The audience gasped. Oprah's smile froze. This wasn't the respectful conversation she had prepared for. Crockett pulled out a folder, waving it confidently. "I have documents here that prove your foundation took millions from the same donors you claim to be fighting against." Oprah's eyes widened, her hand gripping the armrest of her chair. The camera zoomed in on her stunned expression as Crockett continued her unexpected attack. "Today," Crockett announced, looking directly into the camera, "America will finally see the real Oprah Winfrey." The studio audience erupted, some clapping, others booing loudly. CBS producers frantically signaled from offstage, but it was too late. The confrontation had begun, and millions of viewers were watching live as one of America's most beloved television hosts was caught completely off guard by the fiery Congresswoman. Before diving into this shocking confrontation, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up so you don't miss any of our exclusive political coverage. The drama that unfolded next will change how you see both these powerful women forever. Oprah Winfrey had built her empire over 4 decades. From local news reporter to billionaire media mogul, her golden touch had created countless careers, her book club had transformed publishing, and her philanthropy had reached millions. At 71, she remained America's confidant, the woman who could get anyone to open up, from Michael Jackson to Meghan Markle. Her endorsement had helped propel Barack Obama to the presidency, and her influence crossed party lines. She was untouchable, or so everyone thought. Across from her sat Jasmine Crockett, 43, the rising Democratic star from Texas's 30th Congressional District. A former civil rights attorney with a reputation for fearlessness, Crockett had quickly made a name for herself in Washington. Her sharp questioning in congressional hearings had gone viral multiple times. Where Oprah had built her brand on empathy and emotional connection, Crockett was known for her direct, sometimes confrontational style. "We were promised a conversation about your work in Congress," Oprah said, trying to regain control, her voice steady but her eyes betraying confusion. "I think my viewers would prefer we stick to that format." Crockett smiled slightly. "I'm sure your viewers would prefer the truth, Ms. Winfrey. Isn't that what you've always claimed to stand for?" The tension in the studio was palpable. Behind the scenes, producers were frantically debating whether to cut to commercial. This interview was supposed to be the highlight of Oprah's return to broadcast television. A special focused on women in politics. Instead, it was quickly becoming a confrontation that neither Oprah nor CBS had prepared for. "You've portrayed yourself as a champion of everyday Americans," Crockett continued, "but your foundation has been taking money from the same billionaires who lobby against minimum wage increases and health care reform, the same people who fund politicians working against the interests of the communities you claim to support." Oprah's face remained composed, but her breathing had changed. The woman who had interviewed presidents and royalty was now being publicly challenged on her own show. "I spent decades helping people find their voice," Oprah responded, her tone measured. "My foundation's work speaks for itself." "Does it?" Crockett raised an eyebrow. "Because I have the receipts right here." She tapped the folder on her lap. "And I think America deserves to know who's really behind the Oprah brand of social change." The stakes couldn't have been higher. For Oprah, her legacy and reputation were on the line. For Crockett, this was either a career-defining moment of truth-telling or political suicide, depending on what was in that folder and how the public would react. The audience, initially shocked into silence, now murmured with anticipation. Social media was already exploding as clips of the opening exchange raced across platforms. In living rooms across America, viewers who had tuned in expecting Oprah's usual inspiring content were now witnessing what could become one of the most dramatic confrontations in television history. "If you have specific questions about my foundation's donors, I'm happy to address them," Oprah said, attempting to regain control of the conversation. "But making vague accusations doesn't serve anyone." Crockett's eyes narrowed. There's nothing vague about the documents I have, Ms. Winfrey, and I think it's time your viewers see exactly who you've been taking money from while preaching about empowerment. This wasn't just an interview anymore, it was a showdown between two powerful women, representing different generations and approaches to social change, and neither was backing down. The tension thickened as Crockett opened her folder, pulling out the first document. "Let's start with your foundation's connection to global finance partners," she said, her voice cutting through the studio silence. "They donated $12 million, 0 cents to your leadership academy while simultaneously funding lobbying efforts against education reform in America's poorest districts." Oprah leaned forward, her composure intact but her voice lower. "Congresswoman, my foundation accepts donations from many sources. That doesn't mean I endorse every position those donors take on other issues." "Isn't that convenient?" Crockett countered. "You get to take their money while maintaining plausible deniability about their other activities." The cameraman zoomed in on Oprah's face, capturing the slight tightening around her eyes, the only visible sign of her growing frustration. From the director's booth, a producer's voice came through Oprah's earpiece. "Do you want to go to break?" But Oprah subtly shook her head. Cutting away now would only make her look defensive. "My work speaks for itself," Oprah replied, her voice gaining strength. "The Leadership Academy has educated over 700 young women who might never have had those opportunities." "No one is questioning your academy's impact," Crockett pressed. "I'm questioning the hypocrisy of taking money from people who actively work against the values you claim to represent." The audience shifted uncomfortably. Some began to whisper to their neighbors. A woman in the front row looked down at her phone, clearly searching for information about global finance partners. Crockett continued her offensive. "And what about your partnership with Maxwell Media Group? Their CEO donated $7.00, $5 million to your foundation last year while their news outlets ran hit pieces against minimum wage advocates." A producer stepped onto the edge of the stage, signaling frantically, but Oprah waved him away. "Congresswoman, you're cherry-picking information without context," Oprah responded, her legendary poise beginning to crack. "If you'd asked for an interview about my foundation's funding, I would have granted one. But ambushing me on live television suggests this is more about generating headlines than finding truth." Crockett smiled, a gesture that didn't reach her eyes. "I tried the proper channels, Ms. Winfrey. 3 times my office reached out to discuss these concerns. 3 times. We were told you were unavailable." The revelation hung in the air. Audience members exchanged glances. If true, it changed the dynamic of the confrontation. Oprah's eyes flashed with something between surprise and doubt. Had her team failed to inform her of these requests, or was Crockett fabricating them? "I was never made aware of any such requests," Oprah said, her tone cooler now. "I have the email receipts right here," Crockett replied, pulling out another document, date stamped and addressed to your personal chief of staff, Tracy Morris. The cameraman caught the brief flicker of uncertainty on Oprah's face. For a woman renowned for her emotional intelligence and control, it was a telling moment. A production assistant appeared at the edge of the stage again, holding up a sign, "Commercial break in 30." But Oprah once more subtly declined. "What exactly are you suggesting, Congresswoman?" Oprah asked, dropping the warmth from her voice entirely. "That I personally approve partnerships with donors whose values I disagree with? Or that I'm somehow unaware of where my foundation's money comes from?" "I'm suggesting," Crockett said, leaning in, "that your public persona and your private financial dealings don't align, and the American people, many of whom trust you implicitly, deserve to know that." The studio grew even quieter, the tension almost unbearable. Someone in the audience let out an audible "damn," quickly shushed by those nearby. "Let's be specific then," Oprah said, regaining her footing. "Which exact donation are you most concerned about, Congresswoman? Let's address it directly, instead of making sweeping accusations." It was a classic interviewer's move, asking for specifics to test whether the accusation had substance or was merely a political stunt. Crockett didn't hesitate. "The $25 million 0 cents from Wellington Investments in 2023. Their founder, Richard Wellington, has spent over $100 million 0 cents lobbying against healthcare access initiatives in underserved communities, the very communities you claim to champion." Oprah's eyes narrowed slightly. This was not a vague accusation, but a specific claim with numbers and names, and it was one she hadn't expected. From the audience, someone shouted, "Let her speak," though it wasn't clear which woman they were supporting. The stage manager began counting down to the commercial break regardless of Oprah's wishes. The network executives had seen enough. This confrontation needed a pause before it escalated further. "We'll continue this discussion after a short break," Oprah announced, still maintaining her professional demeanor despite the obvious tension. But Crockett wasn't finished. As the commercial light began flashing, she said loudly enough for the microphones to pick up, "The American people deserve transparency, Ms. Winfrey. I hope you'll be willing to provide it when we return." The cameras cut away, but not before capturing Oprah's expression, a mixture of surprise, frustration, and the dawning realization that this interview had spiraled far beyond her control. Behind the scenes during the commercial break, the studio erupted into chaos. Oprah's team huddled around her, while network executives argued with Crockett's staff. Audience members pulled out their phones, some searching for information about the accusations, others sharing their shock on social media. As the stage manager announced, 1 minute to air, the tension had only grown. Oprah sat alone in her chair, reviewing notes her assistant had hastily prepared about Wellington investment. Across from her, Congresswoman Crockett sat calmly, the folder of documents still open on her lap. The clash had only just begun. When the cameras started rolling again, the atmosphere had changed. Oprah's team had used the commercial break to prepare a defense, and she returned with renewed confidence, a tablet in her hand. "Congresswoman," Oprah began, her voice steady, "during the break I reviewed the donation from Wellington Investments that you mentioned. What you failed to note is that it was specifically earmarked for our Clean Water Initiative in rural communities, a project that has provided safe drinking water to over 200,000 people." The audience murmured. Oprah was regaining ground. "The donation's purpose doesn't negate the source," Crockett countered. "Wellington's other activities have hurt millions of Americans." Oprah leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Do you refuse donations from any corporation or wealthy individual whose actions you don't fully endorse, Congresswoman? Because I've just pulled up your campaign finance reports." She turned her tablet screen toward Crockett. "You accepted $50,000 from Transcontinental Energy last year, a company currently under investigation for environmental violations in 3 states. A ripple of surprise moved through the audience. The interviewer had become the interrogator. Crockett's confidence faltered momentarily, but she recovered quickly. That donation was returned when the investigations came to light. Check the amended filings, which were submitted only after the investigations became public, Oprah pressed. "Just as you accuse me of lacking transparency, perhaps you should examine your own record." For the first time, Crockett seemed on the defensive. The power dynamic had shifted. "This isn't about me," Crockett insisted. "It's about the disconnect between your public image and your private dealings." "No, Congresswoman," Oprah said, her voice gaining strength. "This is about selective outrage. You've come to my show with accusations, but you're not holding yourself to the same standard." Oprah turned to address the audience directly, a move she rarely made during interviews. "What we're witnessing here is unfortunately all too common in today's political climate. Accusations without context. Attacks designed for viral moments rather than meaningful dialogue." The audience began to nod, many clearly moved by Oprah's words. Her decades of built trust were working in her favor. "But I didn't come here to attack you," Crockett insisted. "I came with legitimate questions about the contradiction between your public advocacy and your private financial relationships." "Then let's address those questions properly," Oprah replied. "You mentioned Global Finance Partners. Are you aware that after their donation to the Leadership Academy, I personally confronted their CEO about their lobbying efforts? That our foundation made their future support conditional on changing those practices?" Crockett's expression revealed she hadn't known this. "And Maxwell Media Group," Oprah continued, "has completely restructured their editorial policies following discussions with our foundation. Sometimes, Congresswoman, change happens through engagement, not public shaming." The audience erupted into applause. Oprah had not only defended herself but turned the confrontation into a lesson on effective advocacy. Her specialty. Crockett tried to regain control. "These changes you mentioned, where's the public record of them? Why haven't you been transparent about these supposed reforms?" Oprah's smile returned, confidence fully restored. Perhaps because I believe in doing the work, not just talking about it. But since you've raised the question publicly," she gestured to an assistant offstage who quickly brought her a folder of her own. "These are the amended corporate responsibility pledges that both companies signed following our foundation's intervention. They've been available on our foundation's website under corporate partnership standards since they were implemented. I'd be happy to provide you with the direct link." The assistant handed copies to both Crockett and the audience members in the front row. The Congresswoman quickly scanned the documents, her expression shifting from confidence to uncertainty. "This still doesn't address the fundamental issue," Crockett tried, but her voice had lost its edge. "The appearance of impropriety is something I've navigated throughout my career," Oprah finished for her. "Just as you have, Congresswoman. The difference is that I don't use it as a weapon against others working toward similar goals from different angles." Oprah stood, something she rarely did during interviews, commanding the stage completely. "You came here today hoping to expose me as a fraud. Instead, you've revealed something far more important, the destructive nature of our current political discourse." The audience rose to their feet, applause thundering through the studio. Even some of Crockett's supporters in the audience were clapping, moved by Oprah's masterful redirection of the confrontation. Crockett remained seated, the folder now closed on her lap, her planned exposure now fully derailed. "I've spent my life having difficult conversations," Oprah continued, her voice carrying above the applause, "about race, abuse, addiction, inequality. I've never shied away from hard truths. But there's a difference between speaking truth and weaponizing partial truths for political gain." The applause grew louder. Cameras caught audience members wiping away tears. When Oprah finally sat down, the studio was completely under her control. She turned to Crockett, who now appeared significantly diminished in her chair. "Now, Congresswoman," Oprah said, her voice gentler but firm, "would you like to have the conversation we originally planned about your work in Congress and your vision for the country? Because I believe that would actually serve the public interest." The camera zoomed in on Crockett's face as she realized her moment of triumph had transformed into a masterclass in crisis management by one of media's greatest communicators. The exposure she had planned had backfired completely. Crockett nodded slowly, visibly recalibrating. "Yes, I would," she said quietly. "Wonderful," Oprah replied, her famous warmth returning to her voice, "because despite our different approaches, I believe we're both working toward a better America, and that conversation, not this confrontation, is what the people deserve to hear." The audience erupted into one final round of applause. What had begun as an ambush had been transformed, through Oprah's skill and experience, into a powerful demonstration of communication, de-escalation, and the possibility of finding common ground even in the most contentious moments. Oprah Winfrey hadn't just survived the confrontation, she had transcended it. Within minutes of the show ending, Oprah vs. C. Crockett was trending nationwide. Video clips of the confrontation flooded every social media platform, sliced and diced to highlight different moments for different audiences. Conservative outlets emphasized Crockett's initial accusations, framing the confrontation as evidence of liberal hypocrisy. Progressive channels focused on Oprah's revelation of behind-the-scenes advocacy work. But across the political spectrum, one thing was undeniable: Oprah's masterful handling of what could have been a career-damaging ambush. In her Manhattan apartment, media analyst Morgan Freeman, no relation to the actor, watched the replays with professional interest. "What we witnessed today was a clash of communication styles," she told her followers on a hastily arranged live stream. Crockett came with a prosecutor's approach, direct accusations, designed to provoke reaction. Oprah responded with the emotional intelligence and contextual framing that made her a cultural icon. The story expanded beyond the confrontation itself. Within hours, journalists were investigating both women's claims. The Washington Post confirmed that Crockett's office had indeed sent 3 emails requesting discussions about Oprah's foundation, though they had been addressed to a general media inquiry address, not Oprah's personal chief of staff, as Crockett had claimed. Bloomberg verified Oprah's claims about the corporate responsibility pledges she had mentioned, noting that while they had been publicly available, as she stated, they had never been publicized through press releases or media announcements. Lending some credence to Crockett's concerns about transparency, the network executives, who had initially panicked about the confrontation, were now celebrating. The special had drawn the highest ratings for a non-news program in 5 years, with millions more watching clips online. Plans for an extended analysis show were already in motion. Outside CBS studios, supporters of both women had gathered. A group waving truth to power signs championed Crockett's willingness to challenge a cultural icon. Across the street, Oprah fans held up quotes from her most inspiring speeches, celebrating her poise under pressure. In the green room after the show, the cameras caught one final, unexpected moment. As Oprah gathered her things to leave, Crockett approached her, away from the main cameras but still caught on a backstage feed. "I respect how you handled that," the Congresswoman said quietly. "I still have concerns about some of your foundation's partnerships, but I shouldn't have ambushed you on live television." Oprah's response was measured. "Sometimes the most important conversations are the most difficult ones. My door is always open for a real dialogue, Congresswoman, one where we both come prepared and with respect." They didn't shake hands, but there was a nod of mutual acknowledgement before they parted ways. The political implications unfolded rapidly. Democratic leadership, initially supportive of Crockett's reputation as a truth-teller, now worried about blowback. "You don't go after Oprah," a senior party strategist told Politico. "She transcends political divisions. This could hurt Crockett with exactly the demographic she needs for her future aspirations." Republicans, meanwhile, saw an opportunity. "While we don't often agree with Congresswoman Crockett's policies," a statement from the RNC read, "her willingness to question the power structures within her own party support system shows integrity." Media analysts dissected every moment of the confrontation. "Crockett made a fundamental error," explained communications expert Robert Chen on CNN's media program. "She assumed Oprah's power came primarily from her public image and could be diminished by attacking it. What she didn't account for was Oprah's decades of experience handling difficult conversations and her genuine relationship with her audience. For everyday Americans watching, the confrontation represented something larger than either woman." Comment sections filled with people seeing the exchange as emblematic of broader divides between generations, between different approaches to change, between ideological purity and pragmatic engagement. "Crockett represents the new wave that wants instant transformation and perfect moral consistency," wrote a commentator in The Atlantic. "Oprah represents an older approach that believes in working within systems to change them gradually. Their confrontation isn't just about foundation donors, it's about how change happens in America." A week later, the story evolved further when Oprah announced a new transparency initiative for her foundation. All major donations would now be listed publicly with detailed information about how the money would be used. Additionally, corporate donors would be required to sign and publicly disclose their adherence to a set of values aligned with the foundation's mission. "Recent conversations have reminded me that trust requires transparency," Oprah said in her announcement video, without directly mentioning Crockett. "While we've always been careful about our partnerships, we can do better in sharing that process with the public." Crockett responded with a measured statement. "I appreciate Ms. Winfrey's commitment to greater transparency. This is a positive step that will strengthen public trust in her important work." The confrontation that had begun as an attempted takedown had transformed into something neither woman had anticipated, a catalyst for actual change. 3 months later, the two women appeared together at a forum on campaign finance reform. Their previous confrontation now framed as the beginning of an important national conversation rather than a personal clash. "Sometimes progress starts with uncomfortable moments," Oprah told the audience, with Crockett nodding beside her. "The question isn't whether we agree on everything, it's whether we're willing to listen to each other long enough to find the common ground beneath our differences." The image of these two powerful women, one who had built her career on emotional connection, the other on fearless confrontation, finding a way to work together became a rare positive symbol in an increasingly divided political landscape. What had begun as an ambush had evolved into something neither woman had expected, a model for how difficult conversations might actually lead to positive change, even in the most polarized times. If you enjoyed this breakdown of this historic confrontation between two powerful American voices, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We bring you the most in-depth analysis of today's biggest political showdowns. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Did Oprah handle this perfectly, or did Congresswoman Crockett raise legitimate concerns? The conversation continues in our community